Hi, a bit of a different view. We're going to see if this, tell me if this video comes through okay. Mainly this is for the little universal carrier, but I will just quickly show these. So this is some of the Shackleton parts which are mostly ready for painting. Ailerons on, been doing a bit of filling. That one, I've got that strip of plastic in there. I've managed to get two of the nacelles on without, well, they took a bit of work, but not ridiculous, but the other two might be more. I have got the bay which was gluing last night, so sorry, not the bay, the doors. So we'll just see what that came out okay. I just let it set in position here so that I could get the right width, and then it's got a whole lot of plastic card with some good gluing in there so that this is a good solid piece once this is glued. To get that on, I am having to thin out the walls, this, well, okay, I can't do anything about it on that side now, but it was causing the fuselage to bend, so that has solved that, but I've only got the one side to do it on anyway. So the other nacelles are in progress. Okay, let's get to the universal carrier. So that is now very well progressed, and I don't know if that light on it is, I guess it's okay. And I'm just going to run through what I've done on that. Okay, so from the green, which I in my last video said that I don't want to darken it too much, that was a little bit of wishful thinking, because what I use is this sort of cheapy paint, which is, I don't even know what you call this. It's sort of like something between an acrylic and a poster paint. It's a low quality, it's not meant for models really. But I just use some out of the top, thin down with water, and basically wet the whole model and just do a wash like that. So that's just, it's just I mean, it's the equivalent of doing a watercolor wash, I guess. So I did the whole model in that black, let it dry completely for a day. I mean, not that it's mainly the water you're letting dry, but the point is you're trying to get black into all recesses. Now keep in mind the running gear was not on at that point, so I've only glued them on after all of this. So once you've got that blackening, which does of course blacken everything, but it does blacken more in the recesses, and that's what you want. And if you're not happy with that, you know, as you're doing it, you can add a bit more water. You can clean it off and start again, but not after it's dried. So I was happy enough with that, and then I just used before I put the running gear on, and you'll hardly even see this, but a little bit of brown under there, 2 shades of brown, and on the inside of the tracks, so that when you look through the tracks, it didn't look too sort of like well presented. Needed a little bit of dirt. I mean, it's so subtle, to be honest. Could have been a bit more, but not sure how well that's going to come through on that. So there is some brown. Then I dry brushed. So once the black is finished, dried, I then took some of that original green. Was it that one? Well, that one doesn't really matter. Matte 117, and I dry brushed over the whole, sort of, you know, trying to get all the edges a bit lighter again across the running gear. That did not look light enough, so I then left some green on the brush. And did I use a bit of this one? I might have used a bit of this one, Umbral 129, which of course then just mixed with the green a bit and gave a little bit of a lighter shade of green. Again, it was very subtle and not something that would be eye-popping. Once, well, that wasn't exactly dry at the time, but anyway, I then decided to mess around with a pencil, and I just did this sort of thing. It's worth messing around with it, just doing the edges like this. Can you see there? Let me just see if this is on. Okay, so sort of just doing edges with the pencil. You'll see it does look quite nice. It's like silvering, but it can also rub off quite easily. So it's got these tools at the back, and it highlights these tools quite nicely. Actually, it does highlight everything quite nicely, but it's by far not as strong as silver. So I messed around with that, and as I was handling it, it was reducing and so on. I then did decide to use some War Games silver, but I do have to say that it's very, very minimal. You're putting a little bit on the brush because you don't actually want any silver on here that looks like silver. You're putting some on the brush. You're in a dry brush sense. So yes, your brush is wet, but you're getting most of it off on a piece of paper. Might be, if you haven't done this before, probably practice on paint mules. And then when I run my brush across, which was I think it might have been this brush, this size. This oldish one. Dry brush brushes get quite hacked up. When you run it across there, you almost see nothing immediately. It's quite you're really trying to rub off a bit of that remaining silver which is in your brush. You're doing the edges. You're getting all the edges done, and gradually you'll see it, without actually looking silver, it just gives a little bit of shine. And in fact, one of the key elements is that even on flat surfaces, when your brush is so dry that there's almost no evidence of anything on there, even to the point where when you're rubbing it, you're not seeing anything more. When you rub over flat surfaces, it just brings them up a little bit. It gives them a little bit of interest, makes them look metal without you actually seeing any silver or any shine. There's no shine or anything, but it's just given enough of that metallic particle into your surface. And of course, so I've gone around the whole thing and done that. And then the final stage is this ink, again, War Games. Now I don't think you can buy this anymore, but you can get a brown ink and a black ink anywhere, which I highly do recommend, from I rephrase that. This particular tin is not available, but they've got it in different containers these days. So if you get Citadel paints or other brands. Look for their inks, very nice. Now I've had these a very, very long time, and I've got a couple of bottles, and one of them I've thinned down with water because it got used so much during wargame model building. So now this brown is not as strong, which is really, really handy. And then I'm using this thin brush. I'll just actually show you what have I got to put this on. Let me just think. I'll put this onto the lid of that because you'll see that. So this, okay, so that runs into the, you just run that in the corners like, let me do another one there if I can see properly. So you just wet your brush and you just run a line there, and don't tweak it and move it or anything. It's just a little wet line of the ink, of the watered down ink. So if you get an ink, test it on other stuff to see if it's just too strong, too weak. I highly doubt it'll be too weak. And you might put some in a different bottle and thin it down with water a little bit. And I've done every single line over the entire model. Outside lines, inside, every single corner, angle, piece of highlight. Now when it goes over that, of course it dulls the silver or the pencil if you'd done that. So you might then have to just highlight some areas again. So I've still got a number of pieces to put onto this. It's not finished yet. But having just put on the running gear before the other parts go on, I'm then able to go with this ink and go through all of the little areas and put it right in there with a thin brush. You just run a line along each little angle. You just put some on, run a line, get some more, short lines, because it's quite a wet. You're leaving a line of wet. Get some more, do a line. Get some more, do a line. If you feel you need to let some of them dry because you're moving your model or you don't want to touch it as well, of course, yep. I was a little bit careful. So that's where we're at, and it's looking really, really nice. And I'll do some photos when it's finished, but I thought I will just show you that. These inks, by the way, do clean with water. So really, really easy to use, but once they're on the model, they are not going anywhere. They are not coming off for anybody. So what was that? That was watercolor for the entire black wash. Let that completely dry. Highlighting, dry brushing with, sometimes it's even a bigger brush. Dry brushing the whole model to get the edges, all the edges, and just a little bit of variation to knock off some of that black. So you've still got black in all of the recesses, but you're back to close to your original color. Instead of silver for the edge highlights, finally, you can actually just use some gray. It doesn't have to be this particular gray. But very, very subtly, such that when you look at the model, you would never know that this had been used on it. So it's just to bring up a little bit of lightening on all of the edges and the same goes for that as well then. So that's then the next stage, which just without seeing any silver, even on the flat surfaces, going around with a very dry brush, a wet dry brush. So if you are unfamiliar with sort of levels of dry brushing, you can do dry brushing where your brush still contains enough. I could dry brush this with a little bit more paint and actually put quite a bit of silver on here and make it quite over the top, or you put on enough and wipe it off so that essentially the only thing remaining is particles, but enough dampness to still carry it over, and when you touch it on, it's, you know, you're hardly seeing any silver. It doesn't have to be this paint. I just happen to like the final use with that water-based, easy. But I could also have done it with Humbrol. I think because you can thin this with water, or because your brush has water on it and you can get very little of that, it's possibly easier than Humbrol silver paint. And then the last phase is this brown ink. You get a chestnut ink as well, this brown ink. Go and investigate inks if you haven't used them before. Okay, that'll be it for this update. There will be a final set of pictures, I think, once it's done, where you'll see a little bit more detail. Not sure if I should put in the little driver because he's only half a guy, and I think it'll look a little bit weird. I'm not sure. It's like there's half a guy sitting on a seat, which at least gives the proportion of this thing, but does look a bit weird. Maybe I don't know, we'll see. Okay, cheers.